Hello and welcome to the Cloverfield Show. It's the show where we talk about what's going on in the field of clovers behind my house. I'm your host, Cloverfield, and I'm joined as always by my two good friends, Cloverfield and Cloverfield.
We got a 3-leaf clover, a 3-leaf clover, a 3-leaf clover, another 3-leaf clover.
I saw a 2-leaf clover the other day.
Wow.
Wow. But I still can't find the elusive 4-leaf clover.
I thought I found a 4-leaf clover, but it was just a piece of grass.
Hey guys, it's me, Cloverfield. Look at what I found in the backyard. It's a 4-leaf clover.
Wow.
Now I know I've burned you guys before by taping 2-leaf clovers and making them a 4-leaf clover, but this time it's the legit deal.
It's the real thing.
Real situation.
Wow.
In other Cloverfield news, I threw up in the shower this morning.
Wow.
You must have picked a 1-leaf clover. You must have bad luck.
Oh man, no, it was because of all of the beer I drank last night.
Oh, we had a wild night. All of our grovers.
Welcome to Pod People, I guess. Y'all already know what the fuck this is. And in case you hadn't guessed it already, this is our Cloverfield Spectacular. The show
right.
that you've all been waiting for like the last 3 months.
We talk about 2-leaf clovers, 3-leaf clovers,
And 4-leaf clovers, which I believe is now titled Overlord. But right, yeah. But before we get into that, we got some other news, I believe, that we want to get into. Nothing too Clover related. We know that there is a 4th one in the mix sometime this year. We'll be set in World War II. I'm excited. I'm hoping that we get aliens in fighter planes.
It's gonna be Nazi zombies. I'm going ahead and calling it right now.
Shit, yeah, the Nazis are experimenting.
It's gonna be Nazi zombies.
Man, that's gonna...
Nazi zombies versus aliens.
Well, maybe.
I could dig that, honestly.
It's like Dead Snow meets Iron Sky.
Hey, I can fuck with that. Whoever wrote that spec script, thank God he got picked up by Bad Robot.
Well, yeah, this movie is called Overlord, but you know that they're gonna have to throw Cloverfield into the title somehow.
Cloverlord. Like Operation Cloverfield.
It's just gonna be like a big bad Nazi guy. I am the Cloverlord. I have all of the clovers.
Attack mine monsters.
Wearing a green suit.
We gotta defeat these Nazi crabs. I got Betsy waiting at home. I'm gonna protect her.
But yeah, Oscars are coming up. We got some Best Picture nominees.
I could not be more ambivalent about the Oscars this year.
Get Out.
I mean, yes.
That is cool. I mean, you don't really see horror movies get nominated very often.
They're also considering The Shape of Water a horror movie, which it's not really. It's not really. Like, I guess it has elements of horror, but if you're like the Academy and considering The Shape of Water a horror movie, then that means that there is a horror nomination in all of the major categories in the Academy Awards this year.
That's cool.
Which is cool, and it's never happened before.
But to a lot of other people, I feel we don't.
And I mean, it's all the same 2 movies. It's Get Out and The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I haven't seen Shape of Water, but Get Out, good movie.
Yeah.
Very funny, very tense.
It's gonna get snubbed though.
Yeah. Shape of Water also got nominated for Best Picture, I should mention.
Oh, yeah.
Big deal.
Big deal.
Other Best Picture nominees, let's see. We have Call Me By Your Name.
Haven't seen it.
I just watched a couple days ago. I was not a fan. It's just like a bougie, rich 17-year-old kid who mopes around for the whole movie until he gets an army hammer, if you know what I mean.
Oof.
Yeah,
Oof.
I've only seen the previews. I've only seen the previews for this, and everybody's like raving about it. But the first time I saw the previews, I'm just like, wait, so Armie Hammer's just a pedophile?
Yeah, the relationship is kind of predatory, and
that's the impression I got from the trailer.
It's super weird how hyped everyone is on it because like it felt just so flat and boring. Like
it's that thing where everybody gets super wet in the pants for any independent film by a foreign director that has recognizable American actors in it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, everyone's hyped about how realistic the feeling of falling into love feels in the movie, and I didn't get that at all. It just feels like just a mopey kid who kind of gets preyed on by an adult. But there's no strife in the movie. The kid doesn't fucking struggle at all because he's rich as hell.
Is it one of those things where you have a really hard time feeling bad for them because their mopiness comes from how bored they are with their life of luxury?
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
no sympathy for people like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, take up a hobby. Go
Oh
crochet.
no, I'm sad because I'm rich and I have whatever I want and I wish I was poor. Like, I have no sympathy for any of that bullshit. But let's not dwell on this one too long.
I searched it up. The guy is only 24 in the movie, it says. So
Wait, who? Armie Hammer?
Armie Hammer.
I don't believe that.
Well, of course not Armie Hammer himself, but he's supposed
character
to be
he
24,
plays.
right? So I
Yeah.
don't think that's an awful age difference. Certainly compared to him being in his 30s.
He
I guess
seems
so.
older in the
Right,
movie.
but 24. I mean, that's not so bad. But again, if the characters aren't compelling, that's really
Yeah.
its biggest weakness.
I saw that they're making a sequel to this movie,
What?
which is super weird to me.
Call me by my name. That's it. No, stop calling me.
Call you by my name.
Stop calling me that.
Call me back, yo.
Oh yeah, call me back, man.
So there's Darkest Hour.
Didn't see it.
Which
What's
I
that?
actually liked even less than Call Me By Your Name. It's all about Churchill, Winston Churchill.
Oh,
Gary Oldman
yeah.
puts on a latex mask and
a fat
does his
suit.
Norbit thing, but it's serious because he's playing a British imperialist, colonialist.
I don't plan on seeing this movie because from the first preview I saw, I just said Oscar bait.
It was the most insufferable movie I've seen last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
More insufferable than Friend Request?
Well, okay, it isn't as outrightly bad, like Snowman, Friend Request, Amityville, but it's more insufferable in my opinion because it's more boring.
And it takes itself super seriously.
Yeah, and it takes itself super seriously.
Why does
There's
everybody-
much less fun to be had?
Why does
in the movie.
everybody have such a hard-on for Churchill? He was kind of a terrible person.
Because neoliberalism.
Okay.
Dog.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, moving on.
So Dunkirk, I
Well,
also
just-
saw that.
I really enjoyed Dunkirk.
I thought it was pretty good.
I
I've
know
heard
a lot
a lot
of
of good
people.
things.
A lot of people complain because they felt that there wasn't a lot of character development and things like that. But a point of the film is that it's more so a coverage of the event as a whole, rather
Yeah.
than one person's specific encounter or just tale experience through all that. We can just accept it for what it is. Soldiers
the
fighting
one
a war.
problem I had with Dunkirk, I dug it too, don't get me wrong, but the one problem I had with it is I felt like it pulled punches to get a PG-13 rating. Like there was no
but
blood
I
in
think
the
that's
movie,
just-
and that's so weird in a
Christopher
war
Nolan,
movie.
I think, is still able to make things compelling enough without blood. It doesn't seem to be necessary for him anyway.
I'll get around to it.
So we had Get Out,
Which is
we've talked about
fan-fucking-tastic,
at
and I'm
length.
so happy that it's getting the recognition that
Yeah,
it deserves.
it's great. I'm really glad to see it. I read earlier today that Jordan Peele's thinking about doing a Get Out sequel.
which doesn't really surprise me, but kind of makes me nervous for the same reasons that we talked about last time with the Don't Breathe sequel. I really liked the way that movie wrapped up, and I don't know if it needs an additional story or a sequel or anything.
You should just go off, make another horror movie with something else. Everyone will be excited for it because Get Out was so fresh, you could even say, and I know that dude. I know that dude has other ideas too. Yeah. Like there's like he could do something else really great. I think he should focus on something new.
Think of any way they would do a Get Out sequel without undercutting the original.
I kind of agree.
But besides Get Out, we have Lady Bird.
Didn't see.
I saw it.
I just saw it a couple days ago as well. I liked it.
Yeah, well, one thing, it's gotten insane reviews. It's like the highest rated movie on Rotten Tomatoes. The film itself it's just like it's a mumblecore movie. It's just about
basically, yeah. It's a very low key.
It's all about Greta Gerwig's experience going to like Christian school or something.
That's
I don't
the thing
think
about
Catholic,
a lot of movies.
Is she actually in it?
No.
Greta Gerwig? I know she directed, and Saoirse Ronan is the lead, right?
Yes. Well, she is very good. We will talk about Lady Bird some other time. And
on
our horror podcast? That seems really likely.
We got Phantom Thread. I still need to see Paul Thomas Anderson. I really want to catch this movie in the theater before it disappears. And apparently it's Daniel Day-Lewis's last movie, allegedly, as he says every movie he makes.
After every single movie he makes.
And the Post...
haven't seen it.
So Spielberg did Spotlight.
Oh,
and,
that's right.
So he didn't actually direct Spotlight, but this is
his Spotlight.
From The Wire,
his News Lady movie.
Yeah.
Total Oscar bait, it looks like.
Oh, yes.
Haven't seen it, can't really say much. Shape of Water, still haven't seen myself.
Very good.
Nope.
I don't think it will win much of anything, but it's a good movie. Definitely worth seeing.
And then 3 Billboards out of Ebbing, Missouri, which I just saw recently.
Which I think might be, certainly Get Out and that movie, I'd say, are my favorites out of everything I have seen. Because I really enjoyed this movie.
I would probably agree with you. I think 3 Billboards is probably second best to Get Out of the bunch of the ones I've seen.
3 Billboards, it's another one of those where the story doesn't escalate the way you'd imagine. Yeah. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Are you guys bummed about any snubs? I would have really liked to see Good Time get nominated for anything. I thought Robert Pattinson
so not an Oscar movie though.
I did really enjoy Good Time.
I liked it a lot too, but it's not an Oscar movie. There's
no
think
reason
that's the kind
why
of movie
it couldn't have gotten nominations. At least soundtrack or something like that.
Yeah, if anything, the One O Tricks Point never score. If anything,
hopefully soon enough we'll keep getting younger people in the voting.
Once all these old fucks in the Academy start dying.
Yeah.
I'm honestly surprised to not see The Killing of a Sacred Deer
I
nominated.
Agree too.
I kind of expected to see it and would have liked to see it up there.
Didn't The Lobster get a nomination?
Just Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell, yeah. I don't think The Killing of a Sacred Deer got a nomination in any category.
I don't think
this
so.
year. I think I would have liked to see Blade Runner 2049 in the Best Picture nominations. I know it's nominated for cinematography, as it should be.
Man, it's so weird too because they do this thing nowadays with Oscar Best Picture nominees where they'll pick anywhere between 5 and 10, and usually they just do 10 because might as well. They have 9 this year. They could have easily had Blade Runner or Good Time as that 10th spot. Just
or Killing of a Sacred
Deer even. It's like obviously you're not going to win, but you might as well give you the recognition,
right? Well, out of these nominations that we've talked about briefly here, why don't we each give what we would like to win and what we expect will win? Because at least for me, the two are always very different.
Oh yes,
I almost never agree with the decision.
Yeah. Well, I want Get Out to win. I think that's pretty obvious. It's a great movie, but I think 3 Billboards will probably win it. especially with the kind of themes around sexual assault.
Right.
Like in lieu of Hollywood recent events, I think that's kind of a shoe-in.
I think I'd agree with you on both of those ends. I'd love Get Out to win, but I think it's going to be Three Billboards as well.
Well, out of all of these nominations, I've only seen Get Out and The Shape of Water. So mine is kind of a wild guess. I obviously want Get Out to win. Aside from it just being the best movie of 2017, in my opinion. Also, I just think it would be great for a horror film to win Best Picture. It won't. I think it's a pretty dead split for me. It's either going to be The Post.
The Post is not going to win. I'll promise you that.
You think so?
I don't think so.
I think it's just the kind of movie that the Academy loves. And Meryl Streep's in it.
Yeah,
and it's about journalistic integrity, which is just safe enough of a liberal position for the Oscars to get behind, but not radical enough like sexual assault that they'll be alienating people in their groups of friends.
Yeah,
so I haven't seen it. I'm just taking a wild guess.
You think it'll either be The Post or what?
Or Darkest Hour.
For
basically the same reason, because everybody's got a hard-on for Churchill, and Gary Oldman put on a fat suit.
Honestly, it's been a little while since they picked an Oscar bait movie as Best Picture, I think. I think the last one was probably King's Speech. Unless I'm missing one.
Did that win Best Picture?
It did.
Yeah. Do you count
Really?
Spotlight as an Oscar bait movie?
Oh, yeah. No, that was such a surprise
yes.
when it came. Because it was like the safest movie that year. Because
Well, see,
that was
that's
the same
why
year as like Birdman.
That's why I
Shit,
think
right?
that's
Or was
why I
that-
think The Post will win.
I think Birdman
Was that the year of the
before.
Revenant?
Spotlight was the year with The Revenant.
Yeah.
The Revenant?
I mean, I really liked Spotlight, and I wasn't upset about it winning Best Picture. It wasn't my pick, but I think it's a great movie. But it is a very safe movie and the kind of thing that the Oscars can get behind.
Yeah, it's one of the few movies I've seen where 9/11 is posed as an obstacle for these journalists to try and expose the church. They're like, we almost got him, and then
9/11
9/11 happens. They have to hold the investigation. Everyone else is busy talking about other stuff, and so it's like, wow, I've never seen it that way. 9/11 stopped the pedophiles from getting out. That's what it was, a conspiracy that way.
Oh, man. Well,
God.
I guess we can revisit this in a couple of weeks. And,
Yes, that's right. Only a couple
and
weeks
see,
away.
yeah, I will not be in the country for the Oscars this year, so I've not been making much of an effort to get caught up.
Yes.
Like I did last year. Last year I
Best
saw
Animated Feature.
almost all of them. Let's get into our main theme for today. Let's start talking about Cloverfield.
Clovers.
Cloverfield.
Yeah, them lucky greens.
Cloverfield is a very interesting franchise, in that it's even a franchise at all. Let's just start at the beginning and talk
Yes.
about the original Cloverfield
It all
from
began.
2008.
Yeah,
In the
so-
dark days of 2007.
Yeah. Right before one of those hype movies in 2007, there was this trailer. It looked like a home video. And in the middle of it, outside of their apartment, the Statue of Liberty's head just smashed into the street. And then it cut to a date, 1/1808, and there was no title. And I thought this was a really cool way to like build interest for a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say in general, the Cloverfield franchise's strongest suit has been in the various ways they market these movies. And we'll talk about each one individually as we go through. But yeah, I remember all of the build up to this movie back in 2007.
Yeah, they did like ARG stuff online.
Yeah. And I was 12, I guess, 13.
Yeah, I was like 12 or
13, I think. And man, I was super into this. I got really excited for this movie from that first trailer. And then they did the other one where it's just the guy talking into the camera under the bridge, like something's attacked the city and you hear explosions and shit off in the background. And man, I was fucking hyped for this movie. I think I saw it in theaters like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I think I went opening night to see this.
I think I might have too, actually.
I think this was the first opening night movie I ever saw.
And afterwards, I was obsessed too. Like I saw it a couple more times in theaters. I was one of those people who started to like really dig into stuff, like the connection that like the Slusho Corporation has to the monster and everything.
Yeah, dude, I had a Slusho t-shirt.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's fucking baller.
Yeah, you couldn't drink just 5 or something like that was their tagline.
And it's been years since I've seen this movie until we watched it to talk about it.
Yeah, it's been a very long time. I never caught on to any of the viral marketing stuff that happened during the time. I knew about it, and I was excited, but I never did any digger deeping. I didn't know about the Slusho things in it, which I guess is also in a whole bunch of other J.J. Abrams shows like Alias and Fringe. The best show that I've never watched.
Fringe was great when it was on.
I watched the first season of Fringe and then I kind of gave up.
I watched like the first 4 seasons of Fringe.
Oh,
I never saw the end, but it was like my favorite show on TV when it was on. Like me and my mom would watch it like on TV every week when it would come on.
It's J.J. Abrams' specialty, making everyone's favorite show for 2 seasons.
I never noticed the Slusho connections in Fringe, at least. I know they're in every single one of these Cloverfield movies. Yeah, and I don't think they ever say it in this movie, but the main guy who's like getting ready to leave and move to Japan he's going to work for Slusho.
He has
or something.
a Slusho shirt at the party. Yeah.
Or his brother has the Slusho shirt. Yeah. But yeah, that's why he's moving to Japan. Yeah,
yes, so sorry, we haven't talked a lot about plot because I think a lot of people can just, well, the premise is pretty easy.
The framing narrative is, it's a found footage thing. These young mid to late 20-somethings, early 30-somethings are throwing a going-away party for one of their friends who's moving to Japan to accept some job. They're documenting the night and having people, say their goodbyes on camera, and then shit starts going crazy in the city. Something is attacking the city, and then they have to survive the night.
As TJ Miller puts it at one point in the movie, like every good found footage film does, because they have no better way to explain it, is that there's always someone that goes, people need to see what happened here.
Well, no, this was back when they still did try to justify why they never just put the camera down and run away. They don't even do that shit anymore. Nobody questions it anymore. But this was back in the day when somebody was like, why are you still fucking filming? He's like, somebody's gonna need, like, people are gonna see this.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't even know the last found footage film I've seen recently. I feel like
any ones that I have seen have been so underwhelming that I don't remember anything.
It seems the Paranormal Activity movies are probably the only ones doing it. Who watches those anymore?
Yeah.
So. But in those old, like, Diary of the Dead, I was honestly, it's a much better movie than that, but I was getting a whole lot of Diary of the Dead flashbacks, which is, I'm pretty sure that Diary of the Dead came out after. I don't think it holds up as well as I thought it always did. And
I've never seen it.
No, I'm talking about Cloverfield. I'm talking about Cloverfield now.
No, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, here's a question I'll pose to you. I know Matisse said he saw it in theaters. Did you see?
I'm pretty sure I saw it in theaters.
Do you think seeing it on the big screen would make a difference? Because I was thinking about this because I think on a big screen it would feel more immersive than it would on TV.
Definitely.
So it kind of undercuts that a little bit.
It's like a Godzilla style monster movie. Like those are always better on the big screen.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean also like this is just the type of shit that I ate up when I was like 13.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm so torn about, because I agree that it doesn't quite hold up as much as it did when I was 12, 13. But at the same time, I'm not sure if I attribute that to necessarily it being worse or than I remember, or just seeing it on a smaller screen.
I think it's a combination of the two, at least for me. I will say that even though it doesn't hold up as well as I was hoping, it's still not a bad movie. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it's one of the better found footage films that exists.
I would agree with that.
Because it's not incredible, but it utilizes found footage as more than just a trope. It is actually like a way of like telling the story and like revealing and hiding things in like a specific way.
Yeah.
It doesn't just feel like, because a lot of found footage movies, especially more recent ones, I watch them and I'm like, why is this found footage? Why isn't this just a movie, you know?
Yeah.
That's how I feel with a lot of the Paranormal Activity ones outside
honestly,
the first couple.
I would put this in like the prime golden age of found footage movie. I mean,
yes.
You obviously have Blair Witch, which came out much before it.
And which is
Kinda
still the best.
The originator of found footage. And then this kind of brought in like a second wave. I mean, after that you had Wreck, which is really good.
Oh, I've always wanted to see that.
I don't think I ever saw
really
that.
awesome.
Oh, no, wait, yes, I did.
movie.
I saw the original Japanese, or not Japanese,
Spanish?
one, and the really terrible American remake.
But the
Quarantine.
Spanish one is really good.
It's good.
Quarantine. I even hear the sequel, Wreck 2, is supposed to be good.
That's what
I
I've
haven't
heard
seen
as
that
well. First Paranormal Activity movie, also very good in my opinion. Not much
I wouldn't
happens
say
in
very good, but decent.
Yeah.
My hot take is that the third Paranormal Activity is the best out of all of them.
We'll have to do a Paranormal Activity movie
yeah, we will.
episode at some point.
But you know, I would
to
say
unpack there.
I would say that Cloverfield is almost directly responsible for the oversaturation of found footage movies that came after it, because I think it was so successful and everybody got so excited by it, and the hype lasted for such a long time even after it came out.
Right, because Paranormal Activity came out in like 2009 or something, right? 2010? 2010,
sounds
okay.
about right.
So that
2009,
makes sense.
2010.
Right.
Shortly after this movie.
Yeah, I feel like we got a wave of shaky cam movies
Yes,
after
dude.
this.
I think one thing is that it's probably, well, certainly not Cloverfield, because basically all the budget probably went to animating the monster, but
The effects still hold up pretty well, too.
Yeah,
actually.
surprisingly well. I think the amount of restraint they have in
Yes.
showing the monster really helped with that.
But we'll
help
talk
them with
about
their
that.
budget.
I don't want to cut off Eugene's
Yeah.
point that you were making.
not just shaky cam, found footage in general, that the financial success of Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity show that you can make a movie with basically no budget and market it that way, and that it's weird, you put less money into it and you'll make more, because it's all about how you present the film. Paranormal Activity did it because they said, get your theater to play this movie, where they probably were going to play it anyway, but
Right.
it builds up the hype. With Blair Witch Project, that came out at a time when you couldn't really verify a lot of the things that
And it was,
happened.
and that was really like the first real found footage film, and they marketed it as if it were real.
Right.
Which is something that a lot of found footage films have tried to do, but they don't really follow through on it, you know? Where it's
No.
like, they're like, this is real, this really happened. But then you'll still see like all the fucking credits and stuff at the end of all the
Right.
people who worked on it. And
At least Cloverfield doesn't try and pull that
oh
punch.
no, well, I
And
mean,
couldn't.
they
There's
can't.
no way
It's,
they
it's
could've,
about a
yeah.
monster attacking
Right.
New York City. If that was something real, the entire world would know about it
And so
immediately.
it's not like the choice itself isn't because it's cheaper. It's because they felt that found footage style was actually more effective to tell the story, which I guess, yeah, because the opposite end of that found if it wasn't found footage, I think it'd be something more like Godzilla, the 2014 one, where it tries to make it about the people, but the people aren't very interesting.
Right.
And especially if we haven't mentioned, TJ Miller is the man behind the camera.
Yeah.
And he is the comic relief.
You know what I
As
couldn't...
little as he
what I couldn't stop thinking about, and there's probably no connection here whatsoever, but his character's name is Hud, short for Hudson, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it as like an abbreviation for heads up display, like in a video game, because he's the camera. He is our heads up display. I doubt that was their intention,
Probably
but I
not,
just
but-
could not stop thinking about it. Yeah, this was back when T.J. Miller, before he was a fucking fat schlubby nerd, he was a skinnier schlubby
Before
nerd.
he was the star of such features as the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, this was probably back in his donkey punching days.
No, this was first wave T.J. Miller.
Yeah.
Then there was second wave with Silicon Valley and all that, but
Now we're into Golden
And then
Age.
there's
Golden Age.
and then there's Golden Age T.J. Miller Emoji Movie, physically abusing women during sex.
Yep,
T.J.
yeah,
Miller,
there you
yeah,
go.
it's everybody's favorite. T.J.
2007 certainly.
Allegedly.
It was simpler times.
Yeah, allegedly he fucking shoved a bottle. No, I'm not going farther into that.
God,
But
no,
yeah,
yeah.
T.J. Miller's career is done, I think.
And he's not very funny in
And
either.
he's not very funny.
The only other recognizable actor in this is Lizzie Kaplan.
Lizzie
who, of
Kaplan,
course, yeah.
which apparently, like, they were trying to keep this movie so under wraps that they didn't even let any of the actors film or, like, read the script before they had signed on.
Oh,
So when they
leap.
auditioned, they had them reading for shit like Alias, which was also a J.J. Abrams thing.
Right. Nice.
And apparently Lizzie Kaplan had no idea what she was auditioning
Really?
for
Oh.
until she had gotten the job. She thought it was like a romance comedy or something at first.
Okay, which is she seems really uninventive. I mean, all the actors just they're trying, but some of them are either just they're not great or they seem really just bored with the whole thing. Like Lizzie Kaplan, I felt wasn't trying at all.
Well,
in this movie.
I actually kind of disagree. I think Lizzie Kaplan probably gave one of the best performances just because it's so naturalistic.
Yeah, I agree, actually. She's like the outsider of this group. Like, when we first see her at the party, she doesn't really want to be there. She's like she's like friend of a friend, you know, and TJ Miller's being really creepy and trying to like hit on her and stuff. And she obviously just wants to leave. And then she sort of just ends up lumped in with them. So I kind of agree with you. Like, the disinterest matches her character, I think.
I didn't read it as that. I don't think it would be right for her to be bored just because she's around people she's not familiar with. I think that she is the best actor in this movie, but in terms of performance, I think she's just
Well, I
very
mean, also
flat for
she's
me.
not in it for very long, in all honesty.
She's in like over half the movie.
She's
I'd
in
say
a
so.
solid amount.
She's in a good amount. But anyway,
Well, also, I feel like the shaky cam kind of masks how bad some of the performances are.
Yeah. The worst performances are always when people are like talking directly into the camera.
Yeah.
You know? Like, that's always the worst shit. There's some narrative stupidity in this movie, I think.
Well, I mean, the whole main conceit is pretty dumb. Of going back to save this girl.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I like the idea of them having to like survive the night, get to the evac spot without being killed by this giant monster and all the shit that's happening. But the main character having to go rescue his love interest from her apartment building is so fucking stupid.
right. Well, they introduced the little character development that there is in here. The guy who's gonna be going off to Japan. It's not his girlfriend, but it's a friend that they slept together
Once.
Yeah, they slept together once before, but it's one of those like, oh, you can tell they care. You know, they love each other. They just can't admit it. And she's going out with some the
like-
jerk ass lawyer from Silicon Valley. If you guys remember that.
Oh,
But-
that's where he's from.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
fucking.
But he
place
also
it.
at a certain point in the movie, we see him at the party. They leave, and then you
And
just
he's
never
he's-
hear from him
yeah,
again.
he's gone. Like, this plot is like generic rom-com plot, which is weird because it's like wrapped up in this like disaster / monster movie with like this little rom-com narrative at the center of it. Like they had sex once and they've been friends forever and they really like each other, but neither of them will say it. But he's got to go save her because what happened to her shitty boyfriend? Where is he? He's probably dead. It's dumb. It's dumb. The journey of them to get to her and rescue her is not the problem that I have. It's that as the conceit. As the goal. As the conceit.
The way they kind of show the relationship between the main character and that girl is kind of strange to me in the flashbacks. So they say they retrieved an SD card and then they act like it was shot on like tape the whole movie. Because, like, they do, like, these flashbacks at the very beginning of the movie showing their relationship. And they conveniently show, like, timestamps on just those parts.
Right.
To show it was in the past.
Right.
Yeah, in case...
Well, yeah, the idea is that they're recording over this tape that the main character took from when he and the girl went to like Coney Island.
Yeah, but there's no timestamp over the present day stuff.
Right, exactly.
Well, I just imagine how
maybe they turned it off.
That would be if the entire movie we saw the timestamp.
There's just
battery level,
little wreck thing in the corner.
God.
You know, and it's one of those things where it's like, why did he have this like camcorder with them when they were like going to Coney Island or whatever? It's one of those things like they wouldn't really be recording their day. My money is that he had the camcorder because they made a sex tape.
Oh,
because it starts with him like walking around her enormous super luxury apartment penthouse overlooking Central Park, and then he goes into the bedroom to wake her up. Like they were making a fucking sex tape, and then they decided to just record their day at Coney Island, and that's why he's so upset when he finds out that they've been recording over the tape. He's like, wait, I had a tape in there. Did you change the tape? And TJ Miller's like, no, maybe.
That's a great point. In one of the final shots of the film, it is Rob and Beth, and they're on a Ferris wheel, right?
On Coney Island.
And they're at Coney Island, and in the background you can see an object, something hit into the water. And of course at that point people went crazy trying to figure out what that splash meant.
That's always been the mystery, is like what fell out of the sky.
And I never saw it when I first watched the movie. I only heard about it afterwards.
I didn't see it on my first viewing either. Well, because it's the kind of thing, like, it's way off in the distance. If you're not looking for it, you'll miss it.
Another thing,
it's a nice touch.
Must have been easier to catch in the movie theater than on TV, of course, because it'd be bigger. I guess the idea behind that it's supposed to be a satellite that crashes into the water that disrupts the Cloverfield creature.
That was always one of the possibilities.
One of the possible theories.
It was either maybe the creature is an alien and that's it falling into the ocean, or shortly after this movie came out, when I was doing all my research and shit, like right. There's some people that say it's the Slusho satellite that crashed into the ocean and woke up the creature, whatever. It's one of those things that doesn't really matter, but it's a nice little Easter egg. And I always look for it every time I watch the movie since that point, because I know it's there. Yeah.
Well, and it's nice to know that they decided for the movie itself, they wouldn't give an explanation. If you wanted to try and figure it out, then you could do your research.
That's what I like
online.
about this movie, how vague everything is.
They don't have a scene of them talking to some military guy being like, this monster was awoken. Right. They explain everything to us.
Because you don't need that shit. And that's something you get too much of in so many movies, is like all this explanation. And it's like, it doesn't really matter. It's not the point. It doesn't matter what the monster is or where it came from, just that it is attacking the city and these people have to survive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really glad that there's not like an investigative element. Like, we have to figure out what the monster is, because no, these are just normal people just trying to survive. They don't fucking give a shit, you know? I remember there also being a fan theory that there were two monsters.
Oh,
That was one of the things that I like looked into a lot back in that day, is the idea that there's two monsters. It's basically unfounded. It's mostly just people like pausing like the little glimpses of the monsters we get and be like, well, this one looks slightly different from this one, and this one looks bigger than this one, so maybe it's like a mother monster and like a baby monster.
Man,
I mean,
and it's one of those things like, if so, okay, fine, it doesn't
Like,
really matter.
the scale of the main Cloverfield monster in this movie kind of varies throughout the movie.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, it's huge at one point.
oh yeah, that's just that's creative license right there.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that, like, I commend the movie for how much restraint it has in not explaining stuff, but at a point it kind of gets a little convoluted with some of the stuff it's doing. Mainly, my annoyance is the sickness.
Oh, right.
yeah.
That's something
Lizzie
that sort of
Kaplan
just
gets.
yeah, that's just
So,
added into killer character.
Yeah, it's,
There's no
it's
other reason
weird.
behind it.
So, like, you have the main monster, and then it has, like, lice that fall off of it.
like
crab
fleas.
Like alien
Yeah.
fleas, and it, like, they kill people. They're, like, crabber alien type
Yeah.
of things. And,
I do really love the scene where they're in the subway tunnels and they have to fight / run from the little alien
yeah, I
fleas.
think that's one of the most
one of the
effective
best scenes in the movie, for sure.
Yeah, the use of night vision
Without overdoing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Without overdoing it, and just sort of like the claustrophobia of being in the tunnels, and all of that stuff is really rad. But I agree with you. There is that kind of weird, convoluted thing that if somebody gets bit by these things, then they get sick and explode.
I guess their heads explode.
We don't. Well, because when they come out of the subway tunnel and they find like the military base that they've set up in the mall or whatever, like they're carrying by like a stretcher with a dead soldier on it whose like entire
that's right.
torso is like exploded, just like it looks like an alien came out of him or something from like a xenomorph, you know. And they're like, oh yeah, we got another bite here. And then Lizzie Kaplan starts bleeding from her eyes, and they take her behind like a plastic sheet, and then just like we hear a pop and like something like blood hits it. Like
it's kind of dumb.
It's fine, but it's never addressed at any other point in the movie, and it kind of just seems like it doesn't really matter.
I almost feel like it would be better if they didn't explain it through her blowing up. If they kind of just left it a little more open-ended.
Yeah, it's honestly the blowing up that bothers me the most.
Yeah.
I don't mind people getting sick and dying from like these things bites. Like that makes sense. But it's the exploding that seems like it's too much.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary, and I don't understand why they do it.
Yeah, it's kind of a dumb addition.
Sort of going back to like the restraint that they have in, you know, making this movie,
Sure.
how much respect I have for that, especially because like the monster's huge. Like it's the size of buildings. It's like destroying the city, but you really don't get a good look at it at any point in the movie until sort of the end. That's when you see it the best.
Yeah, that's when you get the money shot when he looks straight down
at TJ Miller and eats him.
But well, I would say they show a good amount of him on the TVs, but again,
Kind of, but it's obscured.
It's a TV through a camera, and it's not it's kind of close up. But
the best you see it is at the end when they're on the helicopter before they fall out of the sky, and you see it getting like carpet bombed. But up till that point, you only see it in like brief glimpses because these people are running. You never get a great look at it. And I love that mystery of there being something enormous attacking the city, but they don't feel the need to just show a ton of it. Like it leaves a lot up to your imagination until you do finally get the reveal at the end. And I have a lot of appreciation and respect for that. Like, a lot of the stuff that they're avoiding in this movie is not the monster itself, but things that are directly caused by the monster.
Right. Well, it shows the massive fallout from the presence of the Cloverfield monster. Just in that, clouds of dust sweeping through the streets,
Buildings collapsing.
He knocks over a bridge just with his tail. He doesn't even. It doesn't even. It's not even something he means to do, but he's just so giant that it's just knocking over everything. And the fleas and stuff too that are coming off of the creature. They're a bigger menace than the monster itself to these characters at a certain point.
Right. And I mean, realistically, the monster's probably not like out to get people or anything. It's probably just like wandering around and causing destruction in its wake.
Until he decides to specifically target the helicopter and TJ Miller.
Right. Yeah, that is
asshole.
That is a bit weird. That yeah. Well, I mean, at one point, like when they find Lizzie Kaplan's character again, and she's the only one who's seen the monster, she does make a point that it's eating people. But I mean, it's a big old fucking monster, and we're like little bugs running around. Like, of course it's eating. It's eating people. Like, you know, do you guys want to rate this?
Yeah, I'd say we should just jump into it.
Sure.
Well, for me, it does not hold up as well as... And a part of that is because of the oversaturation of found footage that spawned off of Cloverfield. And, well, even by extension, the Blair Witch. I think those movies lose their effectiveness because of the movies that were made after him. And it sucks because they should get credit for starting these things off. But I think there have been a lot of other movies that have done it better and show that there was a lot more potential in these sort of found footage movies. Like Troll Hunter, I would say, is like one of the best found footage movies that I've seen in quite a while. I really enjoy that movie. The context like that just makes it harder to remember what made it so great. I would still say it's a very entertaining movie, moves at a pretty good pace. The characters I just don't find particularly interesting. And unfortunately, they spend all that setup. It's just 20 minutes of people getting ready for a party, and it really drags. Thank goodness they know it's like, this is just to set up all the nonsense and destruction that we're about to do. So for me, I'm going to give it a 3.5 just because it's still worth checking out, but it won't blow your mind, I think.
Troll Hunter is a great movie.
Yes, Troll Hunter is a great movie.
I really, oh no, I'm glad we could get that. Are we going to rate Troll Hunter?
But yeah, I think Cloverfield, it's one of those movies where it feels more like an amusement park ride than a movie. I remember at the time when this first came out, they were giving out barf bags with the movie because so many people were puking because of motion sickness.
I can believe that.
But yeah, it feels like an amusement park ride in a lot of ways just because it's so immersive and you're following them. And I think it's a really original way of doing like a Godzilla type of movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It feels like a really unique and original way to do that type of story. I agree that it doesn't quite hold up. I feel like if you see this movie, try to see it on as big of a screen as possible.
Sure. Find one of your friends with a great home theater setup.
Yeah, I think seeing it on a big screen will add to the amusement park ride feel.
No.
It'll bring you into it. Might make you puke a little bit, but that's all right. The characters are a little dumb. There's some dumb plot stuff, but it's still a fun ride. I'd give it a solid 3.5. I think it's a decent movie. I think it's a good start of this franchise.
Yeah, I feel basically the same. It is very much like a theme park ride. My biggest problems with this movie come from the characters and the plot. It seems like there's too much effort to try to make like interesting, relatable characters and like a serious plot line. Whereas I would have rather had it be more naturalistic, where it's just like, you know, a documentation of these people trying to survive the night and evacuate.
Right. If it could have just been about escaping the city.
Right.
It didn't need to be
if
a
it
rescue
had been,
mission.
I think it would have been a lot better. For that reason, I'm gonna go right with you guys. Solid 3.5. Good, fun movie. Holds up pretty well. But yeah, all the party stuff at the beginning is hella boring. And I don't give a shit about any of these characters. And I don't give a shit about the romance. And if all of that stuff was changed or removed, I think it would be much better. So we're all on the same page on this one. A unanimous 3.5 pods.
3 leaves and a nub.
3 leaves and a nub. Now let's move on to 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes,
from 2016. By
So, you
Dan
watched-
Trachtenberg.
Yes, you watched Cloverfield, and you thought, well, when are they going to make a second one? And then for 9 years, nothing. There's just silence. We hear whispers of a second movie coming out, but those are all just...
Do we?
That's all just... Well, I don't think that Cloverfield, when that came out, people weren't thinking about a sequel.
I don't think so.
People
Well, the weird
probably
thing
would
is-
want to see this monster attack again. I think the way the franchise has gone now is crazy, but I think a Cloverfield sequel wasn't something too outrageous.
The weird
to
thing
think
is,
about.
they
No,
kinda
but I never heard anything about
They kind of
it. I-
intermittently ran the ARG even after the first movie, like on and off for a few years after.
Oh, wow. So, yeah,
Really?
certainly
Yeah.
things for people to hold on to. And then there is a spec script that is bought out by Bad Robot, written by, I forget the...
Damien Chazelle had a writing
Oh,
credit
yes,
on
that's
it.
right. But he came on after. But the director of the movie, he also directed a short film, Portal, No Escape.
He was
or
also a
Shell's
big
Escape.
podcaster. He had a
Oh, was he really?
podcast on Revision 3 back in the day called Totally Rad Show.
Dan Trachtenberg?
Yeah, I'd talk about like geek culture and geek movies and all that
Very
stuff.
cool. I did not know
Yeah.
that. But a script was bought by Bad Robot, and during production, Big Boy JJ realized that there were a lot of similarities between this story and the things that occurred in the Cloverfield world, which I
fucking
don't feel...
J.J. Abrams must have been smoking crack or something, because I don't see those
I think-
connections
well,
at
I
all.
think the way I see it is he sees the Cloverfield name as a platform to give movies like this a bigger audience, which I think is cool. I think
Yes.
taking the Cloverfield name and using it to elevate experimental, weirder sci-fi script ideas is a cool way of, making a sort of loose anthology of sorts.
Sure.
It is, to a degree, depending on what happens to the film once you try and fit it into this universe. Because once that
Right.
decision was made, reshoots were done. Even then, once shooting was over, people still kept it under wraps.
Yeah,
Stars like Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman, they said they were starring in a film about people stuck in a bunker, but they never let on about a sequel to the massive hit Cloverfield.
Yeah, well, we should hold off before we talk about how they're connected a little
Oh,
bit.
yes,
Yes,
yeah,
just
we can...
'cause-
Well, it is important, like you mentioned, that as when this was picked up by Bad Robot, it was totally unrelated. I think the original title was The Cellar,
The Cellar.
Yeah.
correct? And it's a totally standalone movie, completely unrelated to Cloverfield whatsoever. And last minute, they did some reshoots to loosely tie them together, and they slapped the title 10 Cloverfield Lane on it. It fucking worked, because, like, realistically, we just rewatched this movie last night, and when I was watching it, I was trying to watch it as a completely unrelated movie. It's a fantastic movie. I'll go ahead and get that out of the way right now. I love the shit out of this movie. It would not have gotten the acclaim or even the audience that it did without the Cloverfield
I don't know about acclaim, but I think audience, definitely.
Acclaim maybe, because you do have, like, John Goodman, and people love John Goodman.
Yeah, because I think the movie itself is very strong, even without the connection to Cloverfield. Especially without the connection to
Cloverfield. It's an extremely strong movie, but this is not the kind of movie that the wide American audience will go see. A movie about Mary Elizabeth Winstead trapped in a bunker with John Goodman for the entire movie. It's a slow movie, you know? It's not the kind of thing that, like, gets people excited. But then you slap Cloverfield on it, and people are like, oh, fuck yeah, I remember Cloverfield. So they flock to see this movie. And I feel like there are probably a lot of people who were really pissed off when it was over. Then there's no Cloverfield monster in this movie. I didn't see the monster. But, like, that's fine. Like, it's a really strong movie on its own.
Well, yeah, the reshoots and things that were added on really seem to only happen at the end of the film. There are a couple things that are sprinkled. The premise is this. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is running away from home, from her husband.
Her fiancé.
Her fiancé, yes, we see her leave the ring on the table, classic visual, aid for the audience. And as she is driving out, she gets into a car accident. When she awakes, she is in a locked room with a chain around her leg. And John Goodman comes up to her and basically says, everyone you know is dead. I'm going to keep you alive.
Right. Like there's been some sort of attack. The air outside is not safe to breathe. You can't leave this bunker.
Yep.
And man, is the build-up fucking fantastic in this movie. And the way that they continuously change the way that you look at John Goodman. At first, I mean, you're only getting this from Mary Elizabeth Winstead's perspective. So initially, it seems like he's, like, kidnapped her and is holding her in the bunker for some weird, creepy, possibly sexual reason, And then at a certain point, she sees outside the door to the bunker like a sick woman who all her skin's all fucked up, and there's like a couple of dead pigs outside, and then she starts believing that something has actually happened. And then John Goodman sort of becomes like this good-natured, like sort of like sweet-ish like father figure, and then it totally just changes again. Oh man,
he almost
so
has
good.
like a sort of wisdom because he called it. He plays this ultra libertarian survivalist kind of character,
right? Who's been building this bunker for years for just such a scenario as this.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes is when there's a younger dude in the bunker with them. He's talking about what he wishes he would have done before the disaster happened, and he asked John Goodman's character what he wishes he would have done, and John Goodman's just like, nothing.
I did everything I wanted to do.
Yeah, preparing was my
right
thing.
Yeah, oh man, John Goodman is so fantastic in this. Like, everybody's good in this movie.
He really steals
the whole
show.
Cast of like 3 people who are in this movie. But yeah, John Goodman is great because he's so good at manipulating how you feel about his character, because he's obviously like somewhat unstable. He's sort of like the savior character, like he saved these people by allowing them to be in his bunker, but he has these absolute temper tantrums for the slightest little things where he just goes into rages. So it's like he's dangerous, but also like necessary, and he turns that shit on and off.
Yeah, you could
well.
really compare it almost to Kathy Bates's character.
Yeah,
in
very
Misery.
very similar, like nurturing, but at the same time incredibly menacing.
They have their own set of, internal morality that they think they're running by, that they think is the right thing.
That they're forcibly submitting other people to.
This movie is very good. I think what I like the most is how excellently paced it is. It feels almost Hitchcockian in a way.
Yes,
where
very
you have
much.
a limited setting and a very tight script to where things are revealed every 5-10 minutes, I would say, and kind of twist your perspective on what you've seen before it.
it's slow, but it's extremely tense. It's never boring. For being contained to a central location with only 3 characters, like you said, the pacing and the rate at which they reveal things to the viewer through Mary Elizabeth Winstead is really, really good. And it's just like a constant, like, emotional roller coaster up and down.
I don't know about you guys, but first time I saw this movie, it was in theaters and I knew nothing.
I didn't see it in theaters, unfortunately, but I also knew nothing.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing about that is I feel like it added a lot more doubt whether anything has actually even happened in the outside world. And I thought that was effective. I would actually disagree a little bit on it being a slow movie. I thought it's pretty tensely paced.
Well, because
there's not a lot of fat on the bone.
Right from the beginning, when Mary Elizabeth Winstead wakes up in that room, she's immediately trying to escape.
She has that conversation with the other guy, the younger guy in the bunker, Emmett, trying like, how do you know this guy? Like, blah, 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 all this stuff. Like, how do you know there is actually an attack? And he's like, oh, well, I actually, like, there was. I saw it.
Right.
She thinks John Goodman's lying, but then Emmett's like, oh, no, yeah, I saw it. Like, there is a big fucking flash. It's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Right. Like, and that's a great thing, too, because we get that information that something has happened up on the surface. So no matter how she might feel about John Goodman's character, that they are stuck down there and that he's right in some way.
Right. Well, and it's that point where she, like, softens towards him, you know, and after, like, that escape attempt and she, like, stitches him up.
And he begins to talk about his family and
his daughter, Megan. He keeps talking about Megan. And yeah, then you get sort of like that montage-y sequence of them killing time. Like he's got a jukebox down there and they're putting together a puzzle and watching old VHS movies.
Cannibal Airlines.
And like there's one point where she and John Goodman are like making marshmallow fluff sandwiches.
I thought that was the cutest point.
I know, it's like, it's kind of adorable, you know, like it's kind of cute. It's like John Goodman has been this really terrifying character up till this point, like very on edge. And then all of a sudden he's just like, you know, you're dead, you know?
Yeah.
And then...
But it can't last, of course.
Right, of course, because there is an eruption that happens on the surface. Their air filtration unit, something goes wrong. They have to shut it off and turn it back on. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead is the Michelle, her name is.
Yes, so we can stop calling her Mary Elizabeth Winstead. It's a mouthful.
It's easier always for me just to say the actor's name. I don't care. I usually don't remember character names, but Michelle
and John Goodman is Howard.
Yes,
Michelle and Howard and Emmett.
And Emmett is played by John Gallagher Jr. I don't recognize him from a whole lot of other movies.
He's been in some other stuff.
Right, I know he's done like theater and stuff too. So it's one of those guys. But she has to crawl through an air vent to get to this air filtration unit, and when she is there, she finds the word "help" scratched into a window. Well, it's a door, but there's
like
a window
hatch,
on
like
it.
an extra hatch,
on the bunker, and it was very clearly scratched from the inside. And she also finds a pair of bloody earrings. As crazy as John Goodman was in the beginning, they managed to become friends and get to know each other. But we find the crazier side to John Goodman.
He actually is a crazy person.
Yes. Yeah. Which I don't know how I feel about that. Of course, they had to build up more of a conflict because they couldn't end the movie with they spent the next 20 years in that bunker and they were just friends. That
right.
They have to give her a reason to want to escape that bunker from John Goodman. And
I like that they don't over-explain that too much.
He shows Michelle a picture that he says is Megan, and then at one point, after she discovers the bloody earrings, which the girl in the picture is wearing, she shows the picture to Emmett, and he's like, "No, I know that girl. She went to school with my sister."
Right, which
she went missing a while ago. So then it's like, oh, so John Goodman has abducted at least one young woman and has been keeping her in this bunker, presumably before this disaster happened.
Yes.
Even. Yeah. So it makes you wonder what he really built that bunker for in the first place. Is it really for survival? Or is it somewhere where, like, a little home where he can...
Right, well, it could definitely be both, because he's also... They mentioned that he works with satellites, which is another connection to Cloverfield, that maybe it was the part of the same company, whatever that satellite was that crashed in the water. If that theory
and the
is true.
Cloverfield paradox, which I'll talk about the connections to that once we get into it.
But it's at this point that they must craft an escape, and not just to get away from John Goodman and get out, but also to not be killed by whatever's out there. Whatever Michelle's character is, that she likes to design clothes, and so she's going to design makeshift hazmat suits for each of them so that they can breathe up there, it looks very shoddy.
Well, yeah, it's like a shower curtain and and duct tape and like a makeshift breathing filter made out of like a 2-liter bottle.
A 2-liter bottle with some cotton and what looks like one of those plug-in Febreze things as well.
I mean that stuff doesn't bother me. Like she's working with limited materials. It probably not as effective as a real hazmat suit, but something.
But unfortunately, John Goodman starts to think there's something fishy going on here.
Right. Well, what I like so much about his sort of like craziness, his creepiness, is like it is implied that he really does have a daughter, Megan, and that he is estranged from her. That's sort of the way it is. It's never really explicitly explained why he's kidnapping these girls. They're not like saying that it's downright a sexual thing. It almost seems to be more like he just wants his relationship with his daughter back. So he's holding these young women who are about his daughter's age hostage so he can like play father, which is the impression that I got. And maybe there is some sort of weird sexual thing going on there.
Throughout the movie, like, you'll learn to love cooking. He's got something in mind for what Michelle is she's going to play into his life down there.
I did really love the guessing scene with Little Woman, though. How he never guessed woman. Emmett's
like, oh,
and child.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Michelle is this, and John Goodman's just like, girl, little girl, child, little girl, and then he's like, no, she's older, so she's little princess,
right? Which is just,
and it's like he can't even think of her as anything but like a child, because she reminds him of his own child. So it's like there's complexity to his madness. He's not just like your conventional horror movie like rapist murderer. You know?
But it is around this point when he discovers what they're up to and he kills Emmett because Emmett sacrifices himself. He makes up an excuse, which I found to be a little weak. If he was going to make up an excuse, I think he should have tried to say something that wasn't implying he wanted to kill John Goodman.
Well, he's all like...
he says he's going to steal his gun so that Michelle can respect him the way that she respects
It
Howard.
makes sense for Emmett's character, though. Like, it's a very flimsy excuse, but he's kind of an idiot, you know?
Well,
like, he's established as kind of an idiot.
I never really had a problem with this excuse because it feels kind of like something you'd think of on the spot.
Like super flimsy.
Right. But either way, it gets him killed.
Dissolved in a tub of acid.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an excellent, set piece.
Yes, the acid.
And this is when they are both left all alone. Now there's no one else to get in the way of John Goodman and Michelle.
And he says as much. He's like, now it's just you and me. We can be a happy little family.
He's wearing a very nice button-up shirt. He's shaven. He brings ice cream to her. And it's very clear that he doesn't see this as a bad thing. This is opportunity. This is what he wanted in the first place. This is when she really has to plan her. She has to get the hell out.
Yeah. I feel like him shaving part is such a good little touch.
I agree.
Honestly.
Unlike in like The Room when Greg Sestero just shows up inexplicably shaven at one point. But like it is nice, and he's even dressed nicer, and he's like, oh, well, why don't we do something different tonight and have dessert before dinner? And it's like he's being so like fatherly, but also insanely creepy.
Right.
Because he just murdered somebody and dissolved them in acid.
As we mentioned, there were reshoots done, and a lot of them really only affect the last bit of the movie. But for me, even, this is the part when I think the movie starts to go downhill. Because this is when she's planning her escape. But it devolves John Goodman's character. At a certain point, she's running away. She's knocked him down. She's locked him in her little, like, room. She manages to get into the bathroom where the acid is. She knocks it over and burns John Goodman's face. And he then sort of just transforms into like horror movie monster character. He starts going to, he has a deep growl and he's going, he's lumbering around.
Half of his body has been dissolved in acid.
Yes, I understand that, but I think that it makes his character just like, it's like a creature at this point. He's not very menacing.
That doesn't bother me at all.
It reminded me of what they did with Kathy Bates in Misery a lot, to be honest.
It doesn't bother me at all.
In the same way, like Kathy Bates got burnt and was still like crazy even to the end. I felt like it was very similar.
It's like a visual representation of like the metaphorical mask is set aside. Like this, like John Goodman's character is a monster, and now that monster is revealed. It doesn't even last very long either. Like she knocks over the barrel of acid, he falls into it, starts a fire, and then we only see him.
She's crawling through the vents and he's stabbing through the vent. Which is, I feel like that's something I've seen in a lot of horror movies. Someone stabbing through the wall or an area, just getting closer and closer, and he's saying shit like, I just want to keep you safe.
He's like, he's like, please stay with me.
Yeah,
that doesn't bother me. It's so...
I was bothered by it, because I think...
If they had laid it on super heavily, maybe, but I think
it's
so brief. The whole thing is maybe like 2 to 3 minutes of the whole movie.
It is truly like, it's the climax of the film. Everything that happens after that, it's just sort of flourished.
I would much rather have that happen than him just like die from the acid and her escape.
I agree.
Well, that's why I think, I don't know how they could have done it, honestly. I'm not sure, but I don't like how dumbed down he felt in those final moments. I felt that they had built him up in so many better ways just to turn him into a lumbering monster.
Yeah, but at the same time, we see all of his like animalistic anger earlier, and I feel like that's the perfect summation of that.
I agree, because he's always
just so raw, so much raw anger. He's just trying to kill her.
There are lots of points in the movie where you get the impression that he is like barely in control of himself, that like anything could send him over that edge and have him become just totally animalistic, which is why he's so menacing. Like he's struggling to hold himself in check. And at that point, like his bunker's on fire, his new quote unquote daughter figure has betrayed him. He's in pain from laying in acid. Like everything's totally gone out the window, and the beast is just unleashed, so to speak.
Yeah,
that's how I feel. That's how I always feel about it. It feels appropriate.
Up the animalistic anger and his character so well through the movie.
I think that there was a lot of good motivation that was built up for him, and a well-developed character that seemed to just be erased in this whole final showdown, which I just didn't find particularly satisfying. But she manages to escape John Goodman and break out when she rips her suit, and in a panic she duct tapes it back up, and in a good Promethean fashion, she takes off her mask just like a minute
looks
after.
up and
she
sees
sees
birds flying.
Yeah, she sees a flock of
that's right.
geese flying in the sky and therefore assumes that the air is safe to breathe, which... I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you don't know the nature of what's going on. You don't know
very
if, like...
strange because she looks in the distance, and that's when we see the aliens were real. Howard was right. And that's a thing that I personally enjoyed, that they did show there were aliens. If there weren't aliens in the movie, I probably would have been left very underwhelmed.
I don't necessarily agree with that, because like she's asking John Goodman about like what happened. He's like, oh, we don't, like, there's an attack, but we don't know who it was. It could have been the Russians, blah, blah, blah. There's maybe extraterrestrial in nature. Like, even if they had never shown aliens, it's just like, oh, he's just a kooky like doomsday prepper. That wouldn't have bothered me. She stands up on top of the car and looks out across the field because they're on like a farm, and she sees like an alien ship like hovering over the cornfield off in the distance, and she even fucking says, her character's just like, oh, come on. And that's exactly how I felt the first time I saw that.
I'm so torn because I like the open-endedness of not having the alien ship shown, because I think the idea that it could be anything or nothing ultimately is kind of cool.
Well, here's the problem.
I actually don't have a problem with them showing
the original
ship.
ending of the movie was that she escapes and she sees that, well, apparently, I guess this took place in Chicago, but that Chicago is in ruins, that it's been destroyed in some way. They don't give an explanation of what it is, but Howard is right in some way that an attack did occur.
Right.
And I think Howard needs to be right to make him more compelling, because otherwise he's just a crazy person.
I'm fine with that.
I think that makes the movie infinitely more uninteresting if he's just some crazy
What
dude.
if it's left open-ended, though? I think if it was left open-ended where you didn't know if the severity
and that's why
of
that
the
original ending is fine. But again, no matter what, how like unrelated it is called a Cloverfield movie, and it has the Cloverfield
Well,
title
and
in
let's
it.
get into this.
My last thing on that is, if they are going to show the aliens, it should have been the one shot of the ship over the fucking field. She says, oh, come on, cut to credits.
Yes, because
if you're gonna show the aliens,
that happens after that point is really dumb, and it ruins a lot of the great tension that was built up in the movie.
It keeps the movie from being a perfect film, in my opinion.
I agree. I don't think it's awful. I think they could have done it much worse.
They could have, but what makes it frustrating is that it feels tacked on. The execution itself isn't terrible, and if the movie had been about that, it would have been one thing. But the shelter explodes. She accidentally sets off a car alarm, so the ship comes after her. It sends some alien creature.
Well, it releases like chemical gas first,
right? Which also shows she should have just kept her helmet on.
Well, she does put it back on.
Well, she should have kept it on in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it releases the onion butthole monsters.
Yeah, that look like a metal like puma with an asshole for a mouth.
Yeah, well, several
assholes inside each other that continue to come out.
Yeah.
And the biggest disappointment with this whole thing is that you know why they're adding on this final part, not just because they have to show the alien and they want to try and show a little more special effects spectacle behind the movie, but with her character in the first part, she's running away from her fiance. She has a talk with Emmett, how he used to be really good at track. He was supposed to go off to college, and how he never went on that bus. There's a moment, a shot where she grabs that ticket from his wallet, and it's like, I'm going to run track for you. But no, what it really means is that it's about, in a way, like embracing your own skills and being able to do what you have to.
Well, right. These characters all run away from things.
Right.
When shit gets tough, they run away. Like, that's the theme. That's why she's running away from her fiance in the beginning.
Yeah.
That should have been done away with and given its climax with her escaping the bunker. But someone higher up decided that the best way to represent that would be for her to get in a battle with this worm creature and alien ship, and not only encounter them, but to defeat them in a incredibly ridiculous way.
I want to pitch you guys a thought I had while watching the movie. You know, I mentioned earlier that I kind of see Cloverfield as a series, as almost kind of an anthology to do more experimental sci-fi things under a unified name. And in a way, I kind of see the ending that was tacked on here as almost sort of, you know how in anthology movies they have that, you know, outer storyline throughout the whole anthology?
Yeah.
That, you know, usually isn't quite as strong.
The framing narrative.
Yeah, as the... I almost saw this as kind of just the framing narrative. When I looked at it in that respect, I saw it as not being as egregiously bad because I forgave it a little bit more. You know, it doesn't do much in terms of story in a way that takes away, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Well,
you're right about
it's a silly
that.
thing in terms of her character arc. To end at that, because after the ship is destroyed as well, it shows her driving off, and on the radio they hear about survivors.
She comes to a literal crossroads.
Yeah.
Where she hears on the radio that there are survivors in Houston who are fighting, and she could either take the right-hand path to go to Houston or the left-hand path to go to Baton Rouge, I think.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we're not told what's in Baton Rouge, but basically she can either continue running or she can join the resistance, and now she's no longer running from her problems. So, and she starts driving towards Houston, and we see an even bigger alien ship like off in the distance over the city.
Yeah.
This is going to sound really weird, but I think the ending of this movie would not have frustrated me so badly if overall the movie had been worse. It's because of how strong this script is and these actors are in this single location that makes the movie so fucking good that the last like 10-15 minutes just feels like an aside, and it is just reshoots in order to tie it into the Cloverfield franchise. It's definitely a
radical tonal shift, which I understand.
And it hurts. It overall hurts the movie
don't
for
like
me.
it. I think it wraps up the themes of not running away, kind of on the nose, but it does
Way too on the nose.
In a way that's not the worst, in my opinion. I like that she kind of fights the aliens for a little bit before, instead of just running away. I'm assuming the studio required having this part in, and I think in terms of how you do the section, it's done to the best of its ability. You know?
Yeah, okay, I will concede that. For having to have this section in order to make this a Cloverfield franchise movie, they did it about the best they could have.
It's the best of a framing device that's ultimately an afterthought.
I will agree with you on that one. I will definitely give it that.
I think it's the weakest part of the movie, obviously, but I don't think it's that bad ultimately. Like I think the butthole aliens are kind of dumb, but it's not like they're used too egregiously or for too long.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it definitely doesn't make the movie unbearable. You know, it's the mediocre 10-minute conclusion to an otherwise very good movie. It's not anything that makes the movie unwatchable. It's still a fantastic movie. As far as I'm concerned, the movie really ends when she gets out of the bunker.
Yeah.
And that's all that's preventing it from being a perfect movie, in my opinion. Should we go ahead and rate this?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it 4.5 pods out of 5. I'd take 1/2 off because of the ending. If it ended right when she got out of the bunker, or even right after she sees the first ship, it would be a solid 5 stars. It's a fantastic movie.
I just found myself unsatisfied with how the bunker story wrapped up, and I wasn't a fan of the all the action that happened during the last 10 minutes either. And from what I've heard, the middle of the film is basically the same as the spec script it was created from. For me, I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5. Still more than worth a watch. You will really enjoy it. I got a friend, he doesn't like many movies, but he likes this movie, so this is an everyman film.
Yeah, the thing I love about this movie the most is there's such a restraint in the narrative. There's many things in this movie that could have been explained more, that they had the restraint to not. I think of the relationship with Megan or the other girls could have been more explained, could have ruined that. Mm-hmm. They could have explained the disaster more. But, I think this is a super effective, really tense Hitchcockian type of thriller. I love how minimal the characters are, in that there's only 3 characters, but they flesh them out so much that you're always interested in all 3 of them and kind of the power play between all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. I think John Goodman is excellent in this movie.
Yeah.
Just one of my favorite actors in general, honestly. John Goodman's excellent in most things he's in, but this especially. True. I think this is a great movie. I would give it a 4.5. There's some minor gripes about the ending, but I see it as no more than a framing device, as sort of this experimental Cloverfield anthology. So.
All right. Well, that gives 10 Cloverfield Lane an average rating of 4.3 pods. So finally, to wrap out our Cloverfield episode, we're going to be talking about the Cloverfield paradox, which we have discussed the marketing for that pretty extensively.
Yes, we've been waiting for this.
We've been waiting for a while. Obviously, they showed the trailer during the Super Bowl, the first trailer, and then released the movie on Netflix immediately afterwards.
So if you're listening to this, you probably already have watched it.
Hopefully, because we'll be getting heavily into spoilers, as we always do.
For those of you who do not know, this was not originally meant to be a Netflix film. A lot of this was kept under wraps. This was also, the seller was a spec script that had nothing to do with Cloverfield. It was by the writer who also worked on 21 Jump Street.
The marketing, once again, for this is just buck wild. In the first Cloverfield, they did so much teasing and outside marketing and setting up the whole ARG thing. And then with 10 Cloverfield Lane, they dropped the first trailer just a few weeks before it was released. And then this one, it's one trailer, immediately release it.
Yeah.
They're good with their gimmicks, though, because it fucking skyrocketed immediately after the Super Bowl. So many people were turning this on, immediately.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing to me. I know they did a little bit of ARG stuff before it came out. This was the first movie in a while that's become almost like an event movie.
Yeah.
In which everyone is watching it at the same time, and in a cool way you can kind of get analytics coming in from everyone watching it right at the same time.
Exactly.
Which is pretty cool, I think. I kind of wish it was happening for a better movie.
Yes, that's the problem.
That's the big thing.
But
I had high hopes for this movie.
Yes,
and I was extremely let down. I don't like this movie at all.
With the marketing, too, there's a level of confidence that you feel from it. That first they give that trailer in the Super Bowl that it's going to come out in a couple months.
Yeah, they give a fucking fake release date.
And then after the Super Bowl, it turns out, no, we were so sure you are going to want to watch this movie that we aren't going to make you wait. We're going to release it right now. And
it worked.
All your buddies. As I even said, the viewership on it is really only average compared to things like Bright or, even The Ridiculous Six. It was a trick. It was a trick to make you think that this was going to be such a good movie that they only needed to spend money for one Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
And what I think is great is that the movie had a reported budget of $45 million, and it was bought out by Netflix for $50 million. So they got it to make sure they could cover their costs and then some. Watching this movie, it's understandable why they would. $45 million, that's right.
What did they spend their money?
Yeah, this movie feels like it was made for Well,
God, well, yes, we should go into this a bit. It is a real departure from the movies. I mean, each 10 Cloverfield Lane is different from Cloverfield, but now
this is a much more dramatic departure.
Yes. This follows a group of scientists who are aboard the Cloverfield station.
Yes, which it is called by name a couple of times in the movie.
Yeah,
it's not just us making that shit up.
Yeah, right. But one thing I heard, and I did not want to watch it again to verify, but I'm not sure if a person on the ship ever actually themselves calls it the Cloverfield station, certainly while they're on screen, that it might have been something that was done just through voiceovers or from things on the news.
Well, you had that really corny news report thing where the guy was talking.
Yes,
about...
because the reason they're in space is they have a particle accelerator called Shepard that is being used in space to try and create an infinite energy source because Earth is going through an energy crisis.
Yes, this takes place in the near future. I believe they say it's 2028. Never in the movie, but that's what J.J. Abrams and all of that, they say it takes place. But we're out of fossil fuels pretty much, though the entire world is on the brink of World War III. Because everybody's running out of energy. So this is sort of a last-ditch international effort to create a infinitely renewable energy source that will power the entire globe forever.
On a news broadcast, a woman who is actually the woman from 10 Cloverfield Lane,
who tries to get
in the bunker, smashes her head against the door. She's a newscaster. It's loose, doesn't really connect, but she's talking to a writer,
a scientist. Yeah.
Well, he wrote. It says he's there because he wrote a book called The Cloverfield Paradox. Yeah. And he explains, if you thought there was going to be any sort of effort that you had to put in to learn what's happening in the movie, don't worry, because they explain it all in the first 10 minutes. They spoon feed
everything to you.
It's such a big exposition dump in the first 10-15 minutes of this movie.
This man's concern is that dealing with a particle accelerator of this size, you have the potential to basically damage the space-time continuum. And he even goes so far as to say that beasts will emerge from the sea, which I thought I was going to have a stroke upon hearing because it's just so on the nose.
Yeah. And if you can definitely tell they added that afterwards.
Yes. Here's the connection that I was going to talk about between this and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Apparently, this scientist who they're interviewing, his character's name is Mark Stambler, and John Goodman's character's name is Howard Stambler. And they're both kind of like kooky conspiracy theorist type of guys. And so it's the fan theory that they are brothers. That this scientist and John Goodman's character
must be fun
are brothers.
Family reunions.
Yeah, right.
When they get together. This talking
lots
about
of high
aliens.
blood pressure.
Yeah, lots of high blood pressure and heavy breathing. That's exactly what happens.
Yes, with
his
prediction. What could possibly go wrong? They turn on the Shepard. They are able to, after months of no success. Years of no success. That's right. They've been there for like 3 years or something.
Something like that. They can't get it has to reach like a certain energy index before they can create like a beam or something like that. And they've been unable to do it up till this point.
But then they finally do. And when it happens, the ship starts to rumble. Everyone's getting flung up to the ceiling, getting knocked down. There's a giant flash. And once things are settled, they look out. They realize that the Earth isn't there anymore.
They're just floating in empty space.
Floating in space. Yep. And the gyroscope that they had to power their ship has also gone missing.
Yes.
So they're left without a power. Well, they have power, but the thing to power the Shepard has now has now gone missing.
Right, and there's all kinds of damage to the station and so on and so forth.
And I will say this, because we all said that before we heard anything more about this movie, that this was going to just be an alien running around the ship and killing off crew members movie, that it was going to just be Alien, or it was going to just be like Life. And I will say that's not what happens, but the alternative is not very good either.
No, we just get a rejected Event Horizon spec script.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, this movie feels so much like Event Horizon.
Yeah, I feel it has more in touch with Event Horizon than it does with Alien or Life.
And it's so frustrating that by the end of it, I almost would have rather it just been an alien running around the ship, killing people off.
In a way,
because it's
yeah.
that's overdone, and nobody's ever done it as
Would've
well
made more
as
sense.
Nobody's ever done it as well as Ridley Scott with Alien, but at least then it's simple. The problem with this is like plot hole the movie. It's so convoluted, and they're trying to jam so much shit in here, and none of it makes any sense.
Right, because once they gather themselves, weird things start to happen on the ship. The Russian astronaut, his eye starts wonking out.
It's behaving independently of, and it seems to be that he's hearing voices or something. We don't hear that, but he's like talking to himself in the mirror as if someone else is talking to him.
I gotta emphasize that scene with the eyeball, one of the funniest
It's very
scenes.
funny.
Yeah.
They play it off like horror, as like he doesn't know what's wrong, and suddenly his eye just shoots in the opposite direction.
It looks so good.
Right. Well, and the way they set this up too, at least his character, like this is a team of international scientists. You know, he's the Russian guy. There's a German guy. The main character is she's British, and there's a Chinese scientist.
Yes, who I wonder who they're pandering to, but the Chinese astronaut never speaks English.
She's apparently a very famous Chinese actress. Like she's big in China, and
course.
she herself does not actually speak English.
No,
which is why they have all
like
of the.
in real life,
the actress, she doesn't speak English.
Okay.
So that's why they had all of the other characters speaking Mandarin at times.
These characters are all almost like typecast by the countries they're from, because the Russian and the German.
He's very Soviet.
Yes, and he does not like the German astronaut there. That the tensions are brewing even more than they were when they started this experiment. So you can tell they got some.
The best character is Chris O'Dowd.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
The only little bit of comic relief we have in the movie.
And he is a comedic actor, so it makes sense that they have him be the comic relief. He's basically the equivalent of Danny McBride in Alien Covenant.
Yes.
But I feel like he speaks for the viewer more than any of the other characters, because there are so many times where he points out problems that we were having with the movie.
And it's out of place. Whenever the movie tries to set up an actual tone of suspense, Chris O'Dowd comes in and says some remark that ruins
I was okay
it.
with it because I was not. It was not feeling legitimately suspenseful to me at all.
That's the fault of the movie. I'm saying
Right. Yes.
They failed because they used Chris O'Dowd in inappropriate times.
Yeah, this movie never felt like it had an effective or coherent plot.
Yes,
at all.
and we should.
Well, before we have the eyeball thing, we have this person that's discovered in the wall.
Inside the wall.
Is making for real alien shrieks throughout the ship. When we first heard that, we were like, oh, there it is.
Yep,
alien.
there's the
alien.
monster.
And they hear it coming from inside the walls. They take off the plating, and it's just a person.
Tetsuo, the Iron Man.
Yeah, it's someone who's that's got wires running throughout their body as if they had teleported directly into all of the cords.
Which she did.
Yes.
And of course, once they cut her out, the mystery is that she knows all of them and addresses all of them by name. except for the shepherd engineer, the Chinese woman. And I mean, there's no sense dicking around anymore. What ends up happening, the reason this has happened is when they activated the shepherd, they essentially crashed their dimension into a parallel dimension. Yes. And the Earth is not gone. They've just been catapulted to like the other side of the sun. They eventually find the Earth. And this woman is the shepherd engineer from her universe. And so the Chinese woman is not in that universe. So it's like now they're in another dimension.
And the thing is, since they're both in the dimensions, they realize that only one group of, astronauts can survive in order.
Well, no, we find out that later in the movie that in the dimension they're currently in, when they slammed into each other, this universe's Cloverfield station was destroyed and crashed into the ocean.
Yeah, which, in theory is what we see in the first Cloverfield movie.
Yeah, if it didn't take place 20 years after that movie.
Yeah, that's an obvious plot hole.
Right.
It's pretty much the same conceit as Event Horizon.
Yes.
At its core is kind of a cool conceit.
For sure, but they don't do enough with it. When you're dealing with alternate dimensions and like literally bending and fracturing reality, you can do whatever the fuck you want for any reason.
Well, Event Horizon isn't even about alternate dimensions. It's about interdimensional travel that...
I'm talking about Cloverfield specific.
Just like in terms of conceit, I think that they are trying to do two different things. The reason why they feel similar is because it's schlocky and the characters don't feel like they're reacting properly to the situations that they find themselves in.
Yeah, sure, but there's similar like reality bending stuff in both.
Yeah,
that's what made me feel the connection. And honestly, all of that stuff in the Cloverfield paradox is the best stuff. They just don't do enough of it.
Yeah, I think about halfway through the movie, I just kind of gave up on trying to follow the story.
Because, it's so all over the place.
It's so convoluted.
There's this...
And just a mess.
There's this really dumb, B-plot where the main character... And I don't remember any of these people's names, and I don't care. The main character, her husband is back on Earth... And in their reality, some weird shit's happening. Like, cities are being attacked by what? I don't know. It's implied a large monster. And, like, he finds this little girl and is trying to, like, get her back to her family. And there's no payoff for any of this. Like, it's just a totally unnecessary B-plot that just eats up screen time. In the past, there was a fire that like killed the main character and her husband's kids. The kids died in the fire because of this energy crisis. She put a power cell in her children's room, so they could read.
And I can't imagine what it looks like, but I'm just imagining like it looks like a bomb or something. Like,
right, and it started a fire and the kids died, and then she finds out that in this universe that she's been catapulted into, her family is still alive, and the alternate version of herself never went on to the station. She stayed home. So then she starts trying to plot a way for herself to get from the station to back this to Earth, so then she can be with her family. But then
it's
there's
not her family.
But it's not her family, and that the alternate version of herself still exists. So, like, what is she gonna do? Murder the alternate version of herself and take her place? Like, that's extremely problematic.
Right. You wonder, like, well, how's she gonna do that? And then it's explained they have drop ships.
They have escape pods.
They have escape pods that can travel, and as we mentioned, they are
on the
other side of the sun from the Earth.
Right.
And
which was one of my biggest problems with it. Like, I get this is sci-fi and it's the future or whatever, but their plan is to, before they activate the shepherd, to send it back to their own dimension. The main character and the other woman are going to launch in an escape pod and go back to Earth. But the implication is that they would be able to do that from the other side of the sun.
The plot, in essence, is just dumb, schlocky bullshit.
It doesn't make any fucking sense.
But the problem is, it's not dumb, fun, schlocky bullshit. Let's talk about the set pieces a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think that's one of the highlights of the movie, I would say. We don't get quite enough of them, I would argue, and they're kind of variant in quality.
Uh-huh.
For example, we get a scene where one of the characters gets his arm sucked into the wall of the station.
Yes, Chris O'Dowd, as he's trying to repair the hole they cut to get the other woman out of the wall. His
arm gets sucked in, and he eventually pulls his arm, and it just rips clean right off.
Well, and it's all still exposed. You can see the bone.
He's not bleeding at all. It's just like a very clean
cut. But one of the scientists says it looks like you were born with it. It's like, no, it doesn't.
No.
It looks like it was taken clean off and isn't bleeding at all. Like, that's
he doesn't have any pain or anything. His arm is just gone, and then a few minutes later it shows back up crawling around on its own. That stuff is all great, and then they like put like a glass box over the arm, and it looks like it's trying to write something.
So they give it a pen.
And it writes down cut open so and so, the Russian guy who has died at this point from
the guy with the crazy eyeball.
Right, the crazy Russian eyeball guy. He, like, earlier in the movie starts convulsing. Oh, before that, Chris O'Dowd mentions that all of the earthworms have gone missing because they just have like a tank or something that's full of earthworms for science reasons, I guess.
I feel, did they 3D print their food from the earthworms?
Maybe. They were, they 3D printed their food.
Yeah.
And yeah, at one point the Russian guy 3D prints a gun, which seems like, why would they be able to do that? Whatever. But the worms are missing. The Russian guy starts convulsing. He dies and then just sprays a shitload of worms out of his mouth. And then Chris O'Dowd is just like, well, we found the worms. And like, that's exactly what I was thinking too. I was like, oh, there's the worms. But so the arm tells them to cut him open. They do, and they find the missing gyroscope like in his stomach.
The problem I have with the film more than anything is you have some fun set pieces. I think the scene where the woman's frozen in ice.
Oh yeah,
cool.
that's very cool. There's like a water breach or something, and the Chinese woman is locked in a hallway, and as it fills up with water, like a crack opens outside of the spaceship, and instead of it all just being sucked outside like you would imagine in a movie like this, it all like flash freezes.
Yeah, and she's like frozen solid on the other side.
Yeah, and that shit's really fucking cool. Or then when like Chris O'Dowd goes to repair the oxygen supply or something like that, and all of this like
metal shards.
Like metal shards from like this weird shit that he was using to this like magnetic like soldering glue or whatever, sci-fi shit. It like sort of comes to life and like eats him.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that.
And they did that whole thing in like stop motion, and it looks amazing. It looks so fucking cool. And I don't have a problem with any of it because it's like alternate reality stuff, but they don't do enough of it.
The problem is there's no coherence. You know, it's completely incoherent, and we don't care about any of these characters.
No, all the characters suck.
The set pieces are all right, but like, what's the point if you don't have a good movie, or at least a fun movie to connect it with, you know? That's my biggest problem. I didn't give a shit about any of these characters because
there's too many of them, first of all. There's too many characters.
There's so many characters. The story is so convoluted that I just gave up.
The captain sacrifices himself at one point for literally no reason.
Yeah, David Oyelowo's character. We haven't even really talked about him because he's just a non-character.
I don't care about any of these characters.
Yeah, the only one we really know anything about is the main character, and then everyone else is
and
just
her
defined by their
story.
country.
Her story is well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, she's the only one that has any sort of development. Everyone else is just based on their country. But I don't care about her either. Like, there are a couple of people that I like recognize, like obviously Chris O'Dowd, Daniel Bruhl is the German guy. Like, there's some recognizable faces, but none of these people are interesting at all. I don't care about any of them.
Well, I kind of want to talk about how kind of just shitting this movie out as an event movie kind of does a disservice to the type of thing they were trying to do. Because I think the idea of just releasing a movie out of the blue and having kind of everyone watch it as kind of an event is a really cool thing.
Yeah, sure.
But it's really undercut by having such a mediocre movie to do it as the first of kind of this kind of release.
And what we're expected to believe at this point is that this event, which shakes the foundation of reality with multiple dimensions crashing into each other, we're supposed to believe that this has rippled across space and time and is the catalyst for everything that has happened in previous Cloverfield movies and that will happen in future Cloverfield movies. And for such like a benchmark, like such an important film in the franchise, they whiffed it so bad.
Well, that's the thing. I was talking about with 10 Cloverfield Lane about how the last 10 minutes of it kind of feels like that overarching anthology
framing narrative.
Yeah, framing narrative. It feels like they tried to make this whole movie the framing narrative. And
it's terrible.
It's bad. I was thinking at times what they added after the fact to make this a Cloverfield movie. And sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes I couldn't really tell. Because honestly, it kind of all feels like a framing narrative. Yeah. And, it's not a good framing narrative. Like, the best part of Cloverfield is not knowing the answers to a lot of those questions. And by explaining it, it undercuts both 10 Cloverfield Lane and the original Cloverfield.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The saddest thing now is that with 10 Cloverfield Lane, it seemed to be an opportunity for good movies that wouldn't get the exposure otherwise to be pushed into the forefront and to get the sort of viewership that it deserves.
That's the problem. I think this opens the floodgates for them to buy more middle-of-the-road sci-fi movies.
No, that's what, they bought it with the intention of trying to find some sort of connection.
Well, they connected 10 Cloverfield Lane in the same way, But
it wasn't their intention when they bought the movie, is my point. That with the purchasing of God Particle, there was some sort of intention behind it to make it Cloverfield in some way. They did it with a full script that already had a sci-fi story that wasn't supposed to be connected, but Bad Robot bought it knowing that it would have those ties eventually.
It feels,
and I think that's,
honestly, even though this is the third Cloverfield movie, it feels like this movie is the real birth of the Cloverfield franchise. With 10 Cloverfield Lane, it was more like, let's slap a marketable brand on it that will get people to go see this good movie, and we'll throw in some little things so we can make it loosely tie in. This movie feels like, okay, this is what's going to be our framing narrative for the entire rest of the Cloverfield franchise. Like, this is really the start of the Cloverfield franchise, I think. My concern is there's basically two ways that the Cloverfield franchise could go. One, they continue buying independent sci-fi scripts and releasing them under the assumption that it's caused by this particle accelerator thing from Cloverfield Paradox, and that they just, that's it. They're still totally individual, all this shit, but it's just under a loose anthology framing narrative. Or it's going to get super corporate it's going to turn into one of those nasty Hollywood think tank kind of things where there's way too many people throwing around stupid ideas that all come together into just like a mess of a franchise, and that they're going to try really, really fucking hard to interconnect all of these movies with all of these specific details. And that's the direction that I'm afraid it's going to go.
See,
I want the first one, but I'm
knowing J.J. Abrams' past with stuff like Lost, I think it kind of falls somewhere in the middle. In that, you know, like, I think the idea of kind of an anthology series of sorts where they buy independent sci-fi movies that are a little more on the experimental side.
I'm all about that.
And, you know, they turn them into Cloverfield movies will continue. I have a feeling that they'll continue with the J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof tradition of writing in, you know, framing narratives and connections where it just adds more questions than answers anything. And it just gets more and more convoluted as it goes on.
That's what I'm afraid
I don't think
of.
it'll be corporate in that they'll make a Cloverfield Paradox 2 or anything. I don't think they'll be connected directly. I think they'll be their own movies, and they'll still have this framing narrative. My hope is they don't go in the same way as this movie where they give too much time to trying to
I hope not.
shoehorn in the framing narrative.
I don't know,
think
man.
less is more.
I agree.
And that's the biggest problem with this movie. Also, I think the biggest problem with this movie more than that, though, is the lack of quality control. Like, well, first off, how the fuck do you spend $45 million making this movie? It doesn't feel like it cost $45 million.
No, it doesn't.
It feels like a cheap sci-fi original movie. It feels like a failed Event Horizon spec script.
Honestly, this would be something that would show up on Sci-Fi. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
like
I think
perfect.
so. This is right up their alley.
It's so bizarre to me. And when they bought this movie out, what got them to be like, oh man, this is a good movie? Because I think they bought it once it was complete. You know, I think they bought it when it was God Particle with no Cloverfield relationship, and then reshot the Cloverfield stuff.
Lack of quality control, man.
Yeah. I will say that I'm a little more hopeful for the series than you are, just because I think with the nature of anthologies like this, you're gonna get more variance in quality than you would.
That's true, but
when you're having like a singular like person behind it.
Man, I like J.J. Abrams for the most part, but over the last several years, he's been getting more and more corporate, especially with his...
I think these movies have less to do with him and more to do with the directors that are making the original movies.
Yes, but it's his company that is paying for these things, and it's his company that
he's paying for the distribution, but
right,
he's not creating the originals, you know? Like, I think the strength of 10 Cloverfield Lane is, you know, the seller.
Yeah, but that...
And Dan Trachtenberg.
No, but what I'm saying is that if he ends up becoming too much of a corporate mindset, it's going to drastically affect the types of movies that they are picking up.
If he buys a good movie, it's going to be a good movie, even if the framing device is kind of weak within it, I would argue.
Yes.
The question is whether they'll keep purchase, or if they'll purchase good sci-fi movies down the line or not. I just read just a minute ago that they already have maybe bought Cloverfield 5.
Oh God,
that's what I'm
with
worried
Daisy
about, man.
Ridley.
That's what I'm worried about.
They're gonna connect it to Star Wars. It's gonna happen.
God.
It's all together.
It's all. I'm afraid it's all gonna become so corporatized. I'm just calling it right now. Before we rate this, should we talk about the ending? Arguably the most frustrating thing about Cloverfield Paradox?
Yeah,
It's just so abrupt. Well, up at the station, they've gotten the particle accelerator working again, and they're about to go back to their dimension. The woman who teleported aboard betrays them and wants to kill them so that she can use it to save her world. Well, there's a tussle. She gets sucked out of a window, and not even in a cool way.
Not even in a cool way.
She survives. Daniel Bruhl's character survives, and they teleport back, and they get onto the escape pod, and they're going down to Earth. Everything's happy. We cut back to her husband, who is on the phone with a military friend, someone who works with the space. Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, we found them. They're back. They're coming back down. Like the station's damaged. They're coming back to Earth. Right. And he's like, tell her not to come back.
Right, because he's like, have you seen what's around here? And then we cut over to footage of the sky. And then the Cloverfield monster, who
From
has
the first one,
who's gotten considerably swole, considering he's like triple the size. If we're to believe that he's above the clouds,
right? It rears up above the clouds, roars at the camera. Cut to credits. It's the most tacked on garbage.
It's even worse than 10 Cloverfield Lane.
It's way worse than 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Honestly, I found it kind of hilarious.
But I shouldn't be laughing at this fucking stupid movie.
I have fun laughing at dumb, fun, schlocky movies, but
that's not
does
this
not
movie.
have the
That's
fun
not this
part
movie.
of it. It's definitely schlocky, though.
Yeah, but it's not fun at all. And, like, that just felt like the final slap in the face. Like, hey, it's the same monster from the first Cloverfield. Look at this. You remember this monster? We remember this monster.
Which also shows
dumb.
Why were they were so confident with 10 Cloverfield Lane, because that was actually a good movie, that it didn't matter if the actual monster showed up.
Right.
Dumb people complained about it. That didn't matter to me.
Well, I mean,
anyway.
at least with 10 Cloverfield Lane, there was also the question, like, is this taking place in the same universe? Like, are the aliens related to the monster from the first Cloverfield
even then,
in some way, you know?
We already know that it's in present time because Michelle has an iPhone and all that.
Right,
and then
right.
this one, we know it's in
the future. Yeah.
So that didn't bother me too much. Yeah, that, like, how connected are these? It doesn't have to be the same monster, but
that's
with
right.
This,
it doesn't have to be the same monster.
They were so unconfident that they felt they needed to show the monster.
Right, and to have the scientist guy at the beginning being like, oh, it's going to fuck up the dimensions, beasts will emerge from the sea, and then, oh, there at the end, it's the same fucking monster from the first Cloverfield, but way, way bigger. It's just, it's a lack of confidence in your own ideas. They felt like they had to give a direct connection to the original Cloverfield.
Right. Even though it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I
think we should just
let's get this over with.
Here.
Man, what a disappointment. What a disappointment. The lack of quality control is so sad to see. I was really looking forward to this movie. 10 Cloverfield Lane is honestly one of my favorite recent horror movies to come out. And it's just it's a bummer to see such a drop in quality. I'm still kind of hopeful for the series. I mean, I know Hollywood executives kind of obsess over Rotten Tomato scores.
We'll see in a few months. When Overlord / Cloverfield 4 comes out.
In what, October?
That's when it's slated for now. It'll probably get pushed back a little bit, but...
And then it'll be abruptly released in July.
On, like, fucking Filmstruck.
Yeah.
They'll release it...
Crackle or something.
They'll release it on Crackle and without telling anybody.
They'll mail you a VHS tape with it.
J.J. Abrams will show up and chuck the Blu-ray through your window. Tied to a brick.
But yeah, I feel like executives kind of obsess over Rotten Tomato scores. 10 Cloverfield Lane got 90, original got 77, this got 19,
Rough.
I believe. And we guessed this one. I know I guessed like 68.
I guessed 40 something.
And you guessed 48, I think, and Eugene guessed 28. So I guess Eugene wins this one.
Eugene's the most cynical out of all of us in regards to that one, and
surprisingly,
he was spot on. Well, not spot on, but you were right to be cynical.
Yeah, I try and remain optimistic when it comes to most movies, but I just felt when we were talking about all those, there were so many just like spin-offs and sequels that were on there. It's like this can't go well.
Yeah.
Or it's all too far in to have any sort of competency left anymore. So.
Yeah.
My hope is that they can just kind of keep the framing device of Cloverfield secondary to the main movies that they're trying to make. But I would give this movie a 2. Originally, I was thinking a 3 after I first saw it, but the more and more I think about this movie, the more I really just don't give a shit about anything that happens in it. You know, some of the set pieces are all right, but like, it's a boring movie. I wouldn't recommend.
I was initially gonna give it 2.5, which is at this point I feel generous, so I'm also gonna downgrade it down to a 2. I don't even want to say they get an A for effort, because like there's some good stuff in here, but it just gets so bogged down in just the absolute nonsense plot and boring characters that the few moments where it tries to be original and do something exciting, it just doesn't deliver. So 2 from me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go the same way. I was happy that they didn't do an Alien ripoff, because even though what they did otherwise wasn't great, I probably would have been more upset if it was just an alien running around the ship, because we've seen that. We don't need a repeat of that, especially with something that's trying to claim originality like the Cloverfield series. This is much closer to just it's like the worst episode that you'd see on Black Mirror on a season.
Yeah,
that is what it felt like.
That's the biggest
a lot.
bummer about it, because, you know, the past 2 have been so experimental in its sci-fi. This one just feels so generic.
Yeah.
You know?
It does feel like a bad episode of Black Mirror. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
And so I'm going to have to say 2 as well. I was not offended by anything, but they don't stick it in any way for me, so...
Well, that's the second one that we're unanimous on in this episode. 2 pods.
So yeah, we don't have any game this episode. We're gonna do a couple of mini episodes coming up here.
Yes, I am going to Amsterdam next week, and I will be out of the country for a couple of weeks. So we're going to introduce doing some mini pods. 2 or 3 of those you can expect coming up next.
Got some new releases.
Yes, these episodes will just be a single film per episode, so they'll be a little bit shorter, a little more focused, no news or game segment.
Yeah, so we got upcoming, we have Mom and Dad, a new horror movie with Nicolas Cage in it, by one of the directors who did Crank 2, which is honestly one of my favorite movies. And then we have Annihilation, which is from the director of Ex Machina,
which
he was also the writer, I'm pretty sure, on 28 Weeks Later.
28 Days Later.
Oh, 28 Days Later.
And also he wrote Sunshine, which is
another Danny Boyle
decent sci-fi movie. Yeah, I loved Ex Machina. Alex Garland is great. I'm extremely excited for Annihilation. So
yeah, I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Definitely
the
looking forward
trailers are very intriguing.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, so we have those 2 coming up.
You can expect 2 or 3 mini episodes in the coming weeks, and then we'll get back on track with a longer episode. That brings us to the end of our show. Before we wrap up completely, I would like to take a second to give a shout out to 2 folks who listen to the show and always talk to me about it, and they've been there since the beginning. Brian Hansen, Missy Johnson, you guys are awesome. I always love talking to you about what you think of the show after each episode, and y'all are the real OGs. We love you. If you like the show, you can take just a few seconds to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We really, really appreciate that. You can follow the show on Twitter and Facebook at PodPeoplePod. You can follow my personal Twitter at Mr. Van Awesome.
Yeah, I have a Twitter. Follow me at Mr. Sheets, all one word.
We are available wherever podcasts are found for free.
Eat your fruits and vegetables.
Stay hydrated, drink lots of water, stay away from crystal meth, fentanyl, all those bad things. Hey, smoke weed every day. Eugene, do you have anything you want to plug?
No, nothing for me. Just go check out 10 Cloverfield Lane. Keep up with the horror movies that are coming out this year, and keep it cool.
Let us know what ideas for mini episodes you'd like to see, or themes.
We'll watch anything.
Yeah,
you want to put us through the ringer? We'll do it for you.
We will watch literally anything. That is a challenge.
As long as it's it's got some spooky stuff in it.
Yeah. As long.
Email any complaints you have at.
Yes. If we are doing a bad job, please let us know that as well.
Podpeoplepod@gmail.com. Tell me why Call Me By Your Name is actually a masterpiece of auteur cinema, and why I suck as a person. I really enjoyed reading why I suck.
The show is produced by Ben, edited by me. Ben is the artist behind our theme music. Follow us on the things. And we'll be back with a long-form episode in a few weeks, but get hyped for some little mini-pods coming up here soon. Thank you, as always, for listening. I'm Matisse Van Rossum.
I'm Ben Sheets. Don't let the spooky bed bugs bite.
And I'm Eugene Lundeen. Good night.
We're going back to the Cloverfield to see if there's any new developments.
Oh God, guys! I found this flower, but
I'm looking for 12-leaf clover.
It has teeth, and oh God, it's an alien! Ah!